The dead aren't sleeping peacefully. They're busy at work. You've been taught that death is the final stop, the last breath. A great stillness where everything ends and nothing counts. Paradise for the righteous, damnation for the wicked. That's what they tell you. But what if that's just an illusion? What if people who have died are actually more alive than ever? What if instead of just sleeping forever, they're growing, learning, and even helping guide those of us still living? Edgar Cayce, a man people once ignored as just a sleeping fortune teller, shared something totally different. His visions talked about an afterlife full of movement, choices, and meaning. A place where souls aren't punished or rewarded, but wake up to truth. Where life doesn't end, it changes form. And if what Cayce saw was real, then everything we think about death is a lie meant to keep us scared, controlled, and weak. But not anymore. You're here now, so let's pull back the veil. Edgar Cayce didn't seem like someone who would shake up the world's biggest spiritual beliefs. He was a quiet, gentle man from the Kentucky countryside. No fancy clothes, no grand churches. Just a regular guy who, when he lay down and went into a trance, spoke truths that turned everything upside down about what we think happens when we live and die. People called him the sleeping prophet, but what came through when he was unconscious wasn't fuzzy or vague. He showed us an afterlife that wasn't religious fairy tales or guilt trips. It was organized, smart, and surprisingly busy. According to Cayce, when the body dies, the soul doesn't disappear into peaceful sleep or burn in endless pain. It travels to what he called the astral plane, a dimension not built from clouds or flames, but from energy, thought, and lessons. Cayce said this astral world is like Earth in many ways, but without physical stuff getting in the way. It's not a prison or a waiting area, it's the next chapter. And what goes on there isn't random or make-believe. It's looking back at your life, adjusting your path, and often healing old wounds. Souls in the astral plane aren't just hanging around, they're doing something much deeper. Cayce said this is a space where souls start to digest the life they just finished. They think back, they process, they look at moments that changed them, not to get punished or praised, but to truly understand. He talked about souls feeling the ripple effects of their choices, not through someone judging them, but through seeing it directly. Picture feeling exactly how your actions touched others, not because someone says it was good or bad, but because you witness it yourself. That kind of learning doesn't come from shame. It comes from seeing what's real. Some souls, Cayce said, move fast through this process. Others stay longer, not because they have to, but because they're not ready to go forward. They might feel tied to certain people, places, or things they wish they'd done differently, and some don't even know they're dead yet. That's how near the astral realm is to our world. It touches our reality, just beyond what we can normally see. That's why, according to Cayce, some souls still try to connect with the living, not to scare them, but to help them, to fix something, to finish what they left undone. And this is where it gets uncomfortable, because if Cayce is right, and his thousands of trance readings suggest he might be, then we've been fed a deeply incomplete story about death, not just by religion, but by society, by schools, by our whole culture. Death has been sold as the end, period, so we stop wondering what comes after. Because when you think nothing happens next, it's easier to control your present. It's easier to keep you numb, obedient, scared. But if the soul keeps going, if it grows, then suddenly this life means something totally different. Every choice creates echoes. Every meeting sends out ripples. And that's where it gets even more fascinating. Because some of Cayce's most shocking insights like what happens to souls who refuse to change or how soul families operate, were never supposed to be shared publicly. Cayce's afterlife isn't make-believe, it's a system, one where free will never ends and spiritual growth never stops. He described the astral world as its own kind of school, one that mirrors Earth's lessons and gets you ready for what's coming. Because what comes next isn't decided by anyone except you. There's no heavenly judge sending you to paradise or hell. There's just awareness, growth, and the endless chance to rise higher. And that simple truth might free you more than any afterlife story ever could. One of the most misunderstood parts of what happens after death is the idea of judgment. We've been told for ages that when we die, we go on trial. A bearded figure on a throne, a pit of fire below us, scales measuring our good and bad deeds. You're either saved or damned. But Edgar Cayce's readings showed something much deeper and much less dramatic. He described not a courtroom, but a mirror. Not a judgment day, but a life review. The soul isn't punished or rewarded. It's given the chance to see itself clearly. Not through the eyes of a god, but through the lens of pure, raw truth. According to Cayce, this review starts soon after the soul enters the astral plane. It's not forced on you. It's not a ritual. It just happens naturally. The soul is pulled inward like water flowing back to its source. What it faces isn't punishment. It's clarity. You relive the big moments of your life, not in a quick flash or movie, but in a way that lets you feel the full emotional and spiritual weight of your choices. And here's the twist. You feel it from all sides. You don't just see what you did, but how it felt to the people you touched. Their happiness, their hurt, their confusion, as if it were happening to you. This isn't cruel, it's growth. It's the soul understanding cause and effect at the deepest level. There's no angel shaking their finger at you, no voice thundering from the sky, just you, your experiences, and the truth. You might have been too busy or scared to see while you were alive. Cayce stressed that this process isn't about making you feel bad. It's about alignment. It's the soul lining up with a higher understanding of who it really is and why it came to Earth. And that's where things get real, because if your life doesn't end with judgment, but with understanding, then death isn't about guilt. It's about growing. You're not being punished. You're being prepared. This review lets the soul see where it went off track, not to suffer, but to get back on course. That could mean healing from old wounds. It could mean choosing to come back in another life, to finish lessons you didn't complete. It could even mean guiding others from the spirit realm, helping them avoid the same mistakes you made. But the biggest truth Cayce revealed is this: nothing is hidden in the afterlife, not from others, but from yourself. There are no masks in the astral world. The lies you told, the stories you believed, the excuses you made, they don't work there because you can't run from your own awareness. And for some, that's the hardest part. Not being judged by some outside force, but having to look in the mirror and see what you've been running from your whole life. That's why so many people hold on to simple stories about death. Heaven and hell are easier. They're clear, they're black and white. But Cayce's version puts responsibility back in your hands, not as a burden, but as a gift, because it means your growth never ends. It means you always have the power to change, to realign, to rise higher. Even in death, you're still writing your own story. And if that's right, then life isn't about escaping punishment. It's about getting ready for truth. It's about making decisions today that you'll feel good reviewing later, not because someone's counting, but because the only real judge was always your deeper self, the part of you that sees past pride, past fear, past guilt. So here's what matters. Are you creating a life you'll be willing to examine again? The dead aren't as distant as we believe. According to Edgar Cayce, when we die, we don't disappear into some faraway place beyond contact. We shift into a reality that touches ours, just past what most people can sense. He called it the astral plane, not a foggy heaven or burning hell, but a bright, aware space full of activity, energy, and purpose. It's the space between, the middle territory between lifetimes, between bodies, between stages of awareness, and it's more vibrant than most of the world we walk through daily. Cayce said the astral plane is where most souls travel after the body dies. It's the place where you unpack your recent life, connect with other souls from your circle, and start finding your bearings again. But this isn't a waiting room, and it's definitely not a place of suffering. The souls here are active, sometimes calm, sometimes troubled, based on how they left life and what they carried with them. This place has layers, different frequencies of existence, and where you end up depends completely on your awareness level. You don't get assigned to a realm. You naturally drift to one that matches your vibration. Souls come here carrying the energy patterns from their last life on Earth. That includes memories, feelings, beliefs, even old hurts that never healed. Those unfinished pieces don't just disappear. They're what you work on in this space. Cayce explained it's like walking into a hall of mirrors. Every direction you look, you see yourself, your patterns, your hang-ups, your incomplete lessons staring back at you. Some souls welcome this work, others fight it. And that choice, Cayce said, decides how long you stay there and where you go next. There are others there too, souls from your previous lives, people you cared for, people you hurt, and members of your soul family. Cayce taught that we come back to Earth in groups, clusters of souls that grow together through many lifetimes. You might not know them by their old names or faces, but you'll sense them because the connection runs deeper than memory. In the astral realm, you meet again. Sometimes to finish old lessons, sometimes to lift each other up. These aren't just meetings, they're partnerships. Spiritual growth, he said, happens together. And here's what changes how we view death. Most souls in the astral still affect the living, not as ghosts or haunting spirits, but as energy presences. They plant ideas, shift feelings, guide choices. Cayce believed the dead can serve as protectors, messengers, even sources of inspiration. Some people get thoughts that seem to come from nowhere. According to Cayce, that nowhere might be the astral plane. The wall between the living and dead isn't made of stone, it's made of frequency. When your mind reaches higher states, sometimes you pick up their signals without realizing it. But not every soul moves forward quickly. Some hold tight to what they left behind. Cayce warned about what he called earthbound souls, those who stay attached to their old life because of fear, obsession, or things left undone. These souls are often confused, lost, or refuse to accept they've died, and they remain stuck not because something traps them, but because they won't let go of the past. It's not punishment, it's their own resistance. And even here, choice is everything. The astral plane isn't a fantasy world, it's not religious myth. It's a place of deep reflection, energy exchange, and ongoing spiritual learning. And Cayce stressed that it's as real as anything we know on Earth, just running on a frequency we've been trained not to notice. That training keeps us cut off from the truth, because if you knew the dead weren't far away, if you knew they could still teach, still guide, still feel, you'd stop viewing death as the finish line. You'd stop being afraid of it. A population that doesn't fear death is a population that's hard to manipulate. So maybe the astral isn't just a puzzle waiting to be figured out. Maybe it's a signal, a reminder that everything goes on, that our lives aren't random one-time events but chapters in a long, meaningful story. And if the souls you've loved are there, observing, working, growing, then you're not alone. You never have been. If you think the afterlife is a place of endless rest, you've been fed a comforting lie. According to Edgar Cayce, the dead don't relax in paradise or float in silence. They're busy, focused, doing work that we can't see but is completely real. Death doesn't stop the work. It changes what work looks like. The soul doesn't go on pause. It keeps going with its mission. In many cases, that mission gets bigger. Cayce described a state after death where souls aren't just watching, they're helping. Some come back briefly to help loved ones through dreams, gut instincts, or those odd moments when you feel someone's presence, not scary, but warmly familiar. Others work in quieter ways, shaping new ideas, discoveries, or changes in group energy. We've been taught to ignore these hints, to call them coincidence or your imagination. But Cayce said they're completely real and deliberate. When you feel suddenly safe in danger, when a brilliant idea hits you out of nowhere, when an inner voice warns you right before you mess up, that could be someone who's left this world but hasn't left your life. Some souls, Cayce said, choose to keep doing their soul's work from the other side, especially those who spent their lives serving others. If you lived your life helping people, healing, guiding, or teaching, that drive doesn't die with your body. Actually, it might get stronger. Without the weight of a physical body, the soul can use its energy more freely. It can help without boundaries. Souls can create networks, what Cayce called councils, that work together to shape events on Earth from behind the curtain. Not as controllers, but as balancers, as helpers, as unseen hands gently steering things when chaos threatens to take over. This happens most, Cayce said, during times of world crisis or big changes. The dead aren't just observing, they're stepping in when they can, not through miracles, but through energy influence. They drop ideas into minds that are open to receive them. They spark courage in people about to give up. They weave support through the invisible threads that connect us all. And they don't do it for praise or payment. They do it because the soul's real nature is growth, and growing doesn't end when you die. Some souls also use this time to get ready for coming back. They study, think deeply, and train. Yes, train for future lives. Earth is a school, Cayce said, and those who decide to return often spend time sharpening the skills they'll need next time. This might mean looking at old karmic patterns, meeting up with their soul group to plan when to incarnate together, or working with wiser souls to set up their next mission. Nothing happens by accident. You don't just randomly end up in a body. There's meaning behind everything, a reason for each life you live. And then there are souls who've finished most of their earth work. Cayce described these beings as working more like teachers or guides, still connected to Earth but not tied to it anymore. They move between worlds, acting as bridges. They're often drawn to people who are waking up, those starting to question everything they've been told. They don't push their way into your life. They wait until you start listening, until your vibration starts matching theirs. That's when the connection gets stronger. That's when their guidance becomes clear. We've been made to think that the dead are gone forever, that their influence stops when the funeral ends. But according to Cayce, the truth is much deeper and much more comforting. The dead may be out of view, but they're not beyond contact. They're still here with us, still working, still showing the way. And if we silence the chatter and really listen, we might discover we've never been alone in our journey. Not while living, not after dying, not ever. The word reincarnation still bothers some people. For others, it feels like punishment, a never-ending wheel of birth, death, and rebirth with no exit. But Edgar Cayce's readings completely reverse that story. Reincarnation, he said, isn't a burden. It's a decision. The soul isn't dragged back to earth like a criminal serving a sentence. It comes back because it desires to learn, to develop, to transform. Cayce didn't see earth as a prison. It's a school, a complicated, sometimes tough, often amazing school, where the soul returns to discover what it really is. This idea challenges everything we've learned. It means you didn't just pop up here by chance. You're not some random fluke or fortunate roll of the genetic dice. You're here with intention, picked by you, created by you, and perfectly matched to what your soul required for its next step. And when this life finishes, you'll decide again if there's more to understand, more to heal, more to explore. You come back not because someone forces you, but because your soul recognizes the worth in continuing the lessons. Cayce taught that every life is a chance, a fresh setting, a different body, an opportunity to see things from another angle. Perhaps you were rich before and needed to grasp humility. Perhaps you were distant and rational and now must discover compassion. The situations you draw to yourself aren't penalties. They're opportunities. The more you fight them, the more they keep showing up. But once you recognize them for what they truly are, teachings wrapped in difficulties, they begin to change, and you change too. And karma, it's not what most believe. It's not some cosmic payback system. In Cayce's understanding, karma is just action and reaction, awareness finding its balance. It's the energy traces of old decisions, both positive and negative, looking for completion. You don't suffer for your wrongs. You live through the results of your actions so you can expand. That's all. And if you've harmed others, you might return in circumstances where you feel similar pain, not as punishment, but for understanding. It's about building empathy, not getting revenge. But here's the most revolutionary part. You don't have to return. Cayce was clear about this. Reincarnation is voluntary. You keep your free choice, even after death. If you've evolved beyond what Earth can offer, you can move on. There are other realms, other dimensions, other classrooms. But if you still feel there's something here for you, unfinished work, a soul contract, or simply the pull of returning to help others, you choose Earth again. Each return carries more awareness, more clarity, more responsibility. It's not about suffering, it's about soul-level mastery. Cayce also mentioned that some souls return not for their own growth, but to help others, to wake up those still wandering in confusion, to serve, to lead. These souls often face difficult lives, not because they're fixing old karma, but because they're holding ground, serving as beacons of light in a world that frequently forgets its purpose. Many of these souls forget as well, until something stirs them awake. A moment of grief, a powerful dream, a conversation that strikes too deep. So if reincarnation isn't a burden, what is it truly? It's proof of how dedicated your soul is to expanding. It's evidence that you're brave enough to meet yourself over and over until you've grown beyond the need to come back. And when you do, you advance, not to rest, but to help in greater ways. But while you're here, this life, this breath, this moment, it's holy, it's selected. And perhaps the most powerful thing Cayce ever shared is this. You were never made to be here. You requested it because you understood you were strong enough for it. Not every soul comes back to Earth, some move beyond. According to Edgar Cayce, the soul's journey doesn't end at death. Even after several lifetimes, there are higher realms past this plane, vast and intricate dimensions of awareness, where the focus moves from individual growth to universal evolution. These aren't fairy tale heavens with clouds and angels. They are vibrant, active states of consciousness, where souls work with clarity, love, and cosmic duty. In these realms, the question stops being, "What can I get?" and becomes, "How can I help?" Cayce described these higher planes as levels of spiritual growth. Just as a child eventually leaves elementary school, the soul eventually moves past Earth when it has absorbed what it needed to absorb. And once it does, it's pulled to serve something bigger than itself. That service shows up in many ways, helping guide those still on Earth, supporting the growth of planetary awareness, or adding to the balance and flow of energy across the universe. It sounds grand, but Cayce didn't present this as fantasy. To him, this was just the natural next phase of the soul's journey. It's what occurs when you stop chasing lessons and start living wisdom. In these elevated states, souls no longer carry the emotional weight or ego-driven confusion that weigh down many earthly lives. There's no fear, no lack, no rivalry. These souls know in their core that everything is connected, that your healing is mine and mine is yours. Cayce revealed that in these realms, communication happens mind to mind. Time doesn't flow in straight lines, and thought creates reality. There's no room for lies or control games. Truth is the only language. Souls work together smoothly, moving with a shared mission that goes beyond individual wants. And here's what changes. Everything we believe about spiritual development, growing never stops. Even in the highest realms, souls keep expanding, but the purpose changes. Instead of fixing old pain or learning through opposites, they take part in what Cayce called cosmic service. That could mean helping younger souls through hard transitions, steering planetary changes from unseen places, or joining in creating completely new dimensions. These souls aren't drifting in endless calm. They are calm itself, and they move through it with focus and purpose. What makes this concept so transformative is that it shifts how we view our own life's meaning. If these advanced beings were once like us, lost, wounded, searching, then it shows we're walking the same road. It shows enlightenment isn't saved for special people. It's constructed decision by decision, life by life. And those who now function in the higher planes might have once been exactly where you are today, questioning if anything matters. Cayce believed they remain with us, not as gods to worship, but as fellow souls who just recall more of the truth. They answer to vibration, not to pleading. They don't step in with force, but with welcome. When you raise your awareness through kindness, honesty, and balance, you reach toward them. And when you do, they answer. Not with dramatic displays, but with gentle guidance that seems to rise from within you, because in many ways, it does. This is why Cayce cautioned against putting spiritual figures on pedestals, whether they have bodies or not. Real spiritual growth isn't about rankings, it's about expanding. If someone has reached deeper awareness, it doesn't mean they're better than you. It means they've traveled the path longer, remembered sooner, and now they give back. And you will too, not from duty, but from love. Because once you recall your true nature, service isn't a weight. It's the most natural response there is. We're not climbing some cosmic ladder to flee Earth. We're learning, remembering, and coming back, not to repeat life, but to express the same truth at a deeper level. Earth is one classroom. Many others exist, but the teaching remains constant. Understand yourself, care for others, and dedicate yourself to something greater than both. When that becomes how you live, you won't need to search for the higher realms. They'll already be reaching for you. If everything Edgar Cayce revealed about life after death is real, if souls keep growing, guiding, returning, and serving from higher dimensions, then why isn't this knowledge public? Why isn't it taught in schools? Why don't religious leaders discuss it? Why does it seem like you have to discover this truth by chance, like finding a secret note tucked behind a picture that's been on your wall forever? Because you were never supposed to know, at least not in the system that's been created. Cayce's revelations tear down some of the most powerful structures that exist: religious teachings, government control, education systems, buying culture. They all depend on one basic idea: that death is final and fear is needed to keep you obedient. If death is the finish, then everything you do here becomes heavy with stress. You've got one chance. You must follow orders to get your prize. You must stick to the rules. You must stay scared because fear makes you easy to predict. And being predictable is what control feeds on. But if you understand death isn't the end, if you truly grasp that the soul is eternal, active, and growing, it transforms everything. Suddenly, fear loses its power. You stop deciding from panic mode. You stop hunting for outside approval. You stop kneeling to systems that profit from your quiet. You start thinking independently, and people who think independently are hard to manipulate, hard to market to, hard to dominate. Which is why Cayce's work stays mostly dismissed, mocked, or hidden. He wasn't pushing a religion. He wasn't trying to recruit anyone. He was just sharing what he witnessed repeatedly in thousands of trance sessions. People would ask about health, relationships, spiritual direction, or departed loved ones, and again, the responses led to the same truths. The soul never dies, your choices count, and reality is much bigger than what we've been taught. But this type of truth doesn't market well. It doesn't fit in a social media post. It doesn't keep people needy. So rather than teaching it, the world floods you with distractions. Consider this. From the second you arrive, you're bombarded with messages about what's important: wealth, status, control, looks. You're instructed to achieve, to beat others, to climb in a competition you never signed up for. You're told what to dread and what to want, and underneath everything, there's the steady rhythm. This is your only shot. One existence, one opportunity. Don't blow it. And what's the result? It keeps you worried. It keeps you limited. It keeps you running after mirages. But what occurs when that illusion shatters? When you discover that you've existed before, that you'll exist again, and that there are beings, some familiar, some yet unknown, who are journeying alongside you right now, just past the curtain. You quit playing their game. You begin asking deeper questions. You start recalling why you actually came here. This awareness is threatening, not because it's harmful, but because it frees you. It challenges the narrative that compliance equals goodness, that leaders know best, and that spirituality must pass through organizations. Cayce's readings tell us differently. They reveal that you have direct connection to higher wisdom, to inner truth, to the very energies that create this reality. And once you grasp that, you become something formidable, impossible to rule through fear. That's why this information gets pushed to the edges. It's not on the edges because it's wrong. It's there because it disrupts. It disturbs the system. It strengthens the individual. It shows you that you were never just muscle and bone, never just a label or a career or belief someone gave you. You are awareness. You are memory. You are purpose wrapped in flesh, here briefly to recall something you've always understood, but forgot intentionally. And once you recall it, You can't unknow it because truth has a vibration, and once it rings through you, it can't be silenced. That's why it's concealed, not because it's powerless, but because it's strong, and those who profit from your confusion prefer you never discover it. But you have. You're here. You're paying attention. You're waking up. Once you grasp that death isn't a conclusion, but a continuation, a transition, a return to a deeper level of reality, you can't exist the same way. You won't want to, because suddenly the things you believed were critical, the career rank, the flawless appearance, the public acceptance, lose their weight. And what begins to expand is something different. Focus, meaning, a solid knowing that this life isn't accidental, isn't empty, and certainly isn't insignificant. Edgar Cayce didn't just reveal what happens after you die. He gave us the secret to living differently while we're still breathing. Because if the soul grows after death, it means the work you're doing today doesn't halt when your heart stops. It moves forward. The talks you're having, the terrors you're confronting, the wounds you're mending, the love you're discovering how to offer and accept, it all echoes past this life. Every decision becomes part of the teaching, a piece of a larger story that spans lifetimes. You're not just responding to a messy world. You're engaged in an aware journey. And that understanding doesn't make life harder. It makes it holy. Cayce's vision of the soul as an ongoing aware presence transforms how we connect to everything. Our sorrow, our ambitions, our bonds with others. Losing someone doesn't mean they've vanished. It means they've changed forms. They're continuing, just on a different frequency. And understanding that changes how we grieve. It creates room for connection instead of endings. It lets us talk to them, not from despair, but with honor, because they're not just observing from a distance. In many instances, they're walking right next to you. It also transforms how you view your own suffering, the wounds, the losses, the collapses. They stop being penalties and become openings, not in a sweet, everything's meant to be sort of way, but in a solid, soul-deep way that recognizes your ability to expand through what you face. Life stops being something you endure and becomes something you shape. You stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and begin asking, "What is this teaching me?" That change, small as it might appear, is where mastery begins. You also begin to understand you're not here randomly. You didn't just stumble into this body, this family, this era. You selected this, or at minimum, your soul did. Perhaps not for ease, but for growth. You arrived here to recall something, to shatter a cycle, to guide, to assist, to love more deeply than you've ever managed before. And if you've felt misplaced most of your life, like you're longing for a home you can't quite identify, it's likely because some piece of you remembers this isn't your first round, and that memory is everything. Because the instant you remember your true nature, the system begins losing its hold. You quit living in dread. You quit running on automatic. You quit pursuing the dreams that were never really yours. You begin asking, what's authentic for me? What rings true in my core? What would I choose if I wasn't scared? Cayce's teachings aren't just about what occurs when you die. They're about how to exist while you're here. With honesty, with consciousness, with the knowledge that every action holds energy and that energy travels with you past this life. This isn't about being flawless. It's about being alert, being here, being deliberate. And if you've reached this point, that likely means you've already begun. You've already started to question, to recall, to pull back the curtain. But this is just the beginning. Once you've seen the truth, there's no returning. And truly, why would you choose to? You didn't arrive here to blend in. You arrived here to awaken. So here we stand, at the border of something most people use their entire lives trying to dodge: the reality about death. And not the theatrical version served by religion, nor the empty void pushed by material science, but something deeper, more vibrant. Edgar Cayce didn't claim the soul finishes. He claimed it grows. He didn't talk about final stops. He talked about phases, about dimensions, about transformation. And if that's accurate, if the path keeps going long after this body quits, then we've been focusing on the wrong question forever. It's not, what occurs when I die? It's, what am I creating with my life that reverberates into what follows? The concept that death is a passage and not an ending rewires your sense of what counts. Suddenly, it's not about grabbing everything from this life in a frantic effort to build a monument or escape hell. It's about arriving with purpose. It's about getting ready, not from terror, but with the same respect you'd have while preparing to enter a holy space, because you will depart from here. That's not a warning, it's a certainty. But how you depart, what you take along, what you've changed while here, that's completely your choice. Cayce revealed that our time on earth isn't chance. It's not random, it's not empty. You entered this life with teachings to absorb, people to discover, and darkness to face. And every move you make toward clarity, toward healing, toward reality, shifts not just your journey but the energy you radiate. You're not just existing for yourself, you're existing in a way that touches your soul, family, your ancestors, the people you'll never encounter in this life but have already met in another. And that's what the departed are doing right now. They're still studying, still caring, still drawing nearer to the core of their true selves. They're not complete, and neither are you. What we label the end is simply a turning point in a much larger narrative. So perhaps it's time to stop seeing death as the opponent and start seeing it as a reflection. Because the more you comprehend what follows, the more strength you have to mold what's ahead. Not just after you pass, but tomorrow and the day after, and every second you're still breathing. There are insights you possess now that you didn't before, truths that can't be forgotten. And that awareness brings duty, not the type that drags you down, but the type that elevates you. Exist like it counts, because it does. Mend what you've been dodging, because it travels with you, and love, like it's the only treasure you carry forward, because in many ways, it is. We've explored the afterlife and what happens after death for 40 minutes, revealing the profound insights from Edgar Cayce's work. But there's another crucial part of the soul's eternal cycle that remains hidden from most people. What happens before you arrive on Earth? Before birth. Click the video on screen to discover the 7 sacred stages. Your soul experiences before reincarnating into this earthly life, and finally understand the complete cycle of your existence.